And at 10, faked Clark Kent's death. Jesus, there's a lot wrong with this number already, and we're only at number 10. Oh boy, this is bound to be a fun list. Starting off, Superman wasn't really a good person. He was nowhere near the perfect cookie cutter guy that we know today. He was actually quite toxic to Lois when things first started. Case in point, Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. This 137 issue story features a lot of questionable moments, but one of these things is when Lois Lane disguised herself as the French actress Lois Laflamme so that she could get close to a foreign dignitary for an interview. Superman decides that he has to teach her a lesson for using such tactics in the pursuit of a story, so he falls for Lois Laflamme as Clark Kent. When she rejects his marriage proposal, he pretends to kill himself right in front of her by jumping off a building just to make Lois feel bad. Although he claims that he's doing it as well because he needs to change into his Superman costume in midair because one of the rooms in the hotel they were on was robbed that day, but I think we all know the only reason why he did it. And at 9, prosecutes Lois. In issues 99 and 100 of Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, we see Lois be charged with the murder of Lana Lang. Lois gets into an argument with Lana Lang when they were secretly both invited to a talk show in Gotham City to talk about how much they know Superman during Superman Appreciation Day. I don't know why they're celebrating Superman in Gotham since he hardly did there, but whatever. But on the drive home, Lois and Lana get into a car crash, but only Lois makes it out alive. Batman ends up defending her in court for some reason. I really don't know why. I doubt he passed the bar. But with Batman defending her, the DA's office figures that the only man who can defeat Batman in court is Superman. Thus, he becomes a special prosecutor and prosecutes the love of his life. I mean, he was like forced to do it, but still, what the actual hell is going on with the series? And at 8, killed Lois. While the classic "Oh, Superman killed Lois" scene is typically pulled from the Injustice series, where Supes is tricked into killing that Lois and their unborn son by thinking they're actually Doomsday thanks to a special breed of Joker gas, I'd rather talk about the other time Lois gets killed because of Superman. By getting her pregnant. Yeah, that's right. You thought Spider-Man was the only one who had issues getting women pregnant with his radioactive swimmers? Well, the Man of Steel and the Woman of Kleenex are certainly not as good at match as some may think, considering how in Adventures of Superman Annual number 3, Lois gets pregnant and is then killed by the baby after getting a superpowered Kryptonian kick from inside the womb. Or at the very least a future version of her does, which either way is still messed up as hell. Even if you didn't think it would happen, I mean, like, you kinda need to expect something like that. To be fair, the baby had also not really been exposed to the sun directly, so maybe he shouldn't have had powers to begin with, but I mean, like, couldn't they just have kept Lois in like a chamber with a red sun or something? I mean, I don't know, there were ways to avoid it. And at 7, desecrates Lois's grave. Yeah, that's not even the worst part about this issue, it gets worse. After finding out that Lois is going to die from their baby, Superman tried to kill himself by flying into space as far as he could from Earth. But when he does, he meets an alien warrior princess named Maxima, who he then proceeds to hook up with on Lois's grave. Which is probably the most disrespectful thing you can do on your former lover's grave, I'd think. Especially when the headstone has a line from you that reads "There can only be you," and a wreath that you had left presumably earlier that day, at least. Or if not, earlier that week. But like, yeah. That's probably one of the most problematic covers ever that features Superman, especially at the point that it was released. I'm sure that there's been problematic things since, but oh. And at 6, eviction. In Superman's 8th ever appearance in Action Comics number 8, he didn't seem to really have a grip on the whole how to be a good guy thing. Since after a group of kids commits a crime to join a gang, Superman takes the gang out thinking that it will save the kids. But they don't want to reform, they just want to keep being bad. Probably because the whole like, the gang is the only people who care about me kind of thing or something like that, right? That's usually the line. Well, want to know how Superman fixes that? Not by sending them to jail or getting the cops to take him for some kind of scared straight thing. No, he instead gets an idea from a hurricane and starts tearing the poor neighborhood apart. Yeah, thinking that when he's done, the town will be rid of its quote, filthy crime festering slums. I mean, I guess it kinda worked in a way since the government ends up rebuilding modern apartment units there that are definitely too expensive for the previous residents. So the crime does leave because the people have to leave as well. Huh. Halfway through into number 5, exposed Batman. While this seems like something that any version of Superman would do if they turned bad, it's actually interesting to see that only the Injustice version of Superman did it. Yeah, after getting fed up with Batman leading the resistance against his totalitarian regime, Superman tells the world that Batman is really Bruce Wayne. How does he do this, you ask? Like a press conference, or like a worldwide news message or video maybe? Nope, none of the above. This dude frickin' outs him on Twitter. Superman, in just 4 simple words, tells the world that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Using those 4 words, actually. From the official Superman Twitter account, by the way. Dude doesn't even use his Clark Kent Twitter. Man, he's still hiding behind his identity, but then decides to out Bruce's. It's a damn shame. With over 2.5 million retweets and over 3.5 million favorites, this was certainly number 1 on trending for sure. At least until Kim K posted a pic in like a Batman costume to capitalize on the news, pushing the actual Bruce Wayne as Batman thing to number 2 on trending. That's probably what would have happened. Let's be honest. In at 4, World War II propaganda. When World War II was ongoing, a load of the population turned to superheroes to provide hope. This is where we got Captain America and more. But this also turned Superman into the noble American hero that we know him for today. However, that caused him to be a little more on the prejudice side of things in his material. It was mostly to encourage able-bodied men to enlist and others to buy war bonds to fund their soldiers. But my question is, why did you have to lean so hard into the whole race thing? Really, DC? Like, Superman was literally printing posters that said things like, Superman says you can slap a Japanese soldier with war bonds and stamps, with a very stereotypical drawing on them as well as some offensive slurs. So yeah, that's pretty messed up. They also did this to avoid having Superman just like straight up end the war, because like, let's be honest, if he was fighting, there would be no war. They came up with various excuses for it too, like Clark Kent accidentally using his X-ray vision to read the wrong eye chart while trying to enlist, resulting in him being rejected. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, made a film with his friend's wife. A lot of people make fun of the adult film industry, okay? But honestly, it's the backbone of the economy, at least in some cases. However, Superman has never shied away from helping small business owners, especially in Action Comics number 592 and 593. That's right, before Kim K had her go at it, Superman tried the whole celebrity tape thing, with the help of a character named Sleaze, one of Darkseid's former enforcers. Superman tracks down a missing new god, Big Barda, to Metropolis' roughest neighborhood, the Suicide Slum. There, Superman discovers that not only has Barda been brainwashed by Sleaze, but the Apocalypse native is using her to produce a line of popular adult films. Superman tries to rescue her, but ultimately falls under Sleaze's control as well. And Sleaze does exactly what you would expect. He becomes sleazy. He takes Barda and Superman to the local videographer and makes some naughty videos. Then her husband walks in. It's certainly an interesting couple issues. Penultimately, in at number 2, Executioner. Nowadays, Superman doesn't really kill, aside from a few moments, Man of Steel and Injustice most notably. However, there wasn't really an origin for this moral code. We just kind of assumed that he was a good guy that didn't want to kill. However, writer John Byrne wanted to answer that unasked question in Superman number 22, one of the most controversial Superman stories ever. In this issue, Superman finds himself in a pocket dimension where a group of 3 Kryptonian soldiers had wiped out all life on Earth, with the exception of Bruce Wayne, Lex Luthor, and a synthetic life form that was calling itself Supergirl. They try to fight the criminals, but they're not really a match for them, which results in Supes taking some unexpected actions. He exposes the group, which also included an alternate reality version of General Zod, to golden kryptonite of their world, resulting in them permanently losing their powers, and him keeping his since it wasn't kryptonite from his world, it was from their pocket dimension. But Zod still threatens Superman and says that he'll track him down and destroy his Earth, even though he literally has no powers. But instead of just abandoning them on a dead planet, Supes thinks that that's not enough, so then he kills them with kryptonite. However, he is still grief-stricken and then promises that he will never kill again. My question is, why'd you have to pull out the green kryptonite if you already took away their powers? Couldn't you just have like... Finally, in at number 1, ruled the world. Oh boy. Usually when people talk about ruling the world and Superman, they talk about Injustice again. And while this is a great story and an example of what can go wrong with superheroes, the story of King of the World is also a good cautionary tale about Superman. In the late 90s, this story featured a series of prophetic dreams that make Superman realize that his regular MO, just flying around and waiting for disasters to happen isn't really working, and Kal-El decides to be a little more proactive. However, to him that means building a series of spy satellites to survey Earth, helping Superman keep track of everything that's happening at once, all over the globe, and giving up his life as Clark Kent to work as Superman full-time. Sleep deprived and losing his grip on humanity, as well as his sanity, Superman starts to interfere more and more with Earth's affairs, toppling extremist governments and even changing the weather. But when he realizes that he can't be everywhere at once because it's the whole world, the Man of Steel deploys an army of Superman robots to help maintain law and order, effectively making Superman a benevolent dictator. Only snapping out of it when he gets a kiss from Lois Lane. This is what happened, okay? This is what No Nut November will do to the weak-minded, okay? Superman wouldn't stand a chance. Also, I find it funny how he made flying robots, because the Man of Steel made Men of Steel.
Coming in at number 10, we have the disfigurement of the tragic villain known only as BOOTFACE. Batman is infamous for having a strict rule against killing any of the henchmen or villains he often fights against, but that doesn't stop him from doing some major damage, and no one shows that off clearer than BOOTFACE. A former criminal who made the extremely unfortunate choice to try and attack Batman with a flamethrower, BOOTFACE was permanently scarred when his flamethrower malfunctioned, and Batman kicked him in the face during the fire, grafting the imprint of Batman's boot directly on BOOTFACE's, well, face. BOOTFACE would return as part of a group of similarly injured villains that wanted revenge on Batman for permanently altering the course of their lives, and while it could be argued that maybe these guys shouldn't have been living a life of crime in the first place, it still is pretty messed up just how far Batman is willing to go, even if he's technically not breaking his no-killing rule. Coming in at number 9, we have the time that Batman made Robin dig his own grave. Yes, the Silver Age of comics has more than its fair share of wild moments, but few can probably compare to the cover image of Jimmy Olsen and Robin being forced to literally dig their own graves while Batman wields a Tommy gun. Now, apparently the actual story behind this cover is because Batman has lost his memory and been convinced that he's actually a member of the Mafia. While Superman still retained his sense of self, he had to pretend to go along with the Mafia act until he was finally able to return Batman's memories, but not before likely traumatizing Robin and Jimmy Olsen for life by making them dig their own graves at gunpoint. Coming in at number 8, we have the time that Batman launched a villain into space. Once again, Batman's no-killing rule was placed under a bit of stress when Batman Incorporated's Japanese division found itself under attack by the immortal supervillain Lord Deathman, a bad guy that was even able to resurrect himself from having his corpse thrown into a literal volcano. Outraged at the destruction that Deathman had caused, Batman's solution was a fate even worse than death, locking the villain within an unbreakable safe and then launching that safe into the darkness of outer space. Sure, the bad guy's not gonna die, but trapped in a small box floating endlessly for the rest of eternity? That's a bit of a yikes punishment, Batman. Coming in at number 7, we have Batman deciding to resurrect the Joker. Batman's always been in a weird moral place with how often he's let the Joker live, and the question of how many people have died because Batman refused to end his archenemy's life is an often asked one. But when the Joker was betrayed by Ra's al Ghul and left to bleed out, Batman made the hasty decision to save his nemesis with the power of the resurrecting Lazarus pits. And while resurrecting the Joker did allow Batman to stop Ra's al Ghul's bioweapon from being unleashed, the Joker soon returned to his evil and crazy ways, leaving Batman potentially to blame for any further death and destruction the Joker might cause. Coming in at number 6, we have a Golden Age Batman highlight with the time he straight up murdered a henchman with the BATPLANE. Batman's earliest adventures are notable for not quite having polished out the details of the character yet, with stories featuring him using guns and being a lot less uptight about the whole no-killing thing. One of the biggest examples was how Batman treated the superpowered henchmen of the villain Dr. Hugo Strange in the very first issue of his self-named series, using the Batplane's machine guns to take out a criminal truck driver before using a noose on the back of the Batplane to wrap around the neck of a genetically altered mental patient labeled as a monster. You'd think that maybe the comic would imply that Batman was just airlifting the monster somewhere else, but the narration makes it clear that nope, Batman just flat out hung a guy. The 1940s were definitely a different era. Coming in at number 5, we have Batman spying on the entire superpowered population with Brother Eye. Following an event in which Batman had his memory wiped by Zatanna and then eventually remembered it, Batman realized he would never be able to fully trust the Justice League, or any powerful metahumans for that matter. In a case of majorly overcompensating for this issue, Bruce Wayne constructed Brother Eye, an artificial intelligence housed in a secret satellite that kept tabs on every superpowered being on the planet, all without anyone knowing they were being watched. Of course, this tech would later be manipulated and abused by the villain Maxwell Lord, showing that sometimes Batman's paranoia can go a bit too far and have disastrous effects on the rest of his team. Coming in at number 4, we've got the time Batman was the worst friend ever and slept with Barbara Gordon behind Dick Grayson's back. In the alternate future where the animated series Batman Beyond takes place, Terry McGinnis eventually found out the reason that Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson were no longer on speaking terms. Apparently, Bruce and Barbara Gordon, the girl that Dick was absolutely crazy about, had a relationship that ended in a miscarriage while Dick was out of the city dealing with personal issues. This is some incredibly heavy stuff to put in the comic follow-up to an animated children's series, and it really seems out of character for Batman to betray his protege so deeply and then handle the fallout so poorly. Whether it's iffy writing or just a really dark take on Bruce Wayne's personality, breaking the hearts of two people he claims to care about the most is a really bad look. Coming in at number 3, we've got to go with Batman keeping logs on how to defeat the rest of the Justice League. During an event known as the Tower of Babel, Ra's al Ghul manipulated his daughter into giving up Batman's secret files that he had assembled on all the Justice League members and how exactly to defeat them if they ever went rogue. And while Batman claimed this was all because of the very real possibility of the team being compromised or being controlled by an enemy force, it's kind of hard to defend your choice as being the right one when Martian Manhunter was lit on fire, the Green Lantern was made blind, and Superman was poisoned with red kryptonite. Bruce Wayne may be smart, but in the hands of a villain, his plans just might be deadly. In a similar vein, coming in at number 2, we have Batman hacking Cyborg the very first time they met. While this incident occurred in the alternate Injustice universe, the idea behind it is essentially the same as our last entry. Batman has a hard time trusting people, and sometimes that gets revealed at the exact wrong moment. With the Justice League divided as Superman becomes a villain in this universe, Batman temporarily injures Cyborg with an electrical virus, which Cyborg quickly realizes would be impossible with his new firewalls, and then makes the realization that the virus's date signature reads as the very first week that Cyborg and Batman ever met. Ice cold, Bruce. Ice cold. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have to go with Batman's treatment of Robin in the infamous series All-Star Batman and Robin. There's always been a bit of weirdness to the dynamic of Bruce Wayne teaching a child or teenager to become a violent vigilante sidekick in his quest for justice, but this alternate universe miniseries by Frank Miller definitely takes the cake. With this version of Batman constantly verbally berating Dick Grayson with some dated language that we definitely can't use on this channel, the worst moment of all comes when Batman locks Dick inside the Batcave as some form of intense training under pressure, forcing the boy to live in pure darkness and eat rats to survive. With all the awful things Batman has done over the years, torturing this young boy who just wants to be a hero might be one of the worst.
And at 10, expose Batman. While this seems like something any version of Superman would do if they turned bad, it's actually interesting to see that only the Injustice version of Superman actually did it. Yes, after getting fed up of Batman leading the resistance against his totalitarian regime, because, you know, that's a bad thing, Bruce, Superman tells the whole world that Batman is really Bruce Wayne. How does he do this, you may ask? Like a press conference, or like a world message, or like a video? No. None of the above. The dude just frickin' tweets. Superman, in just 4 simple words, tells the world that Batman is Bruce Wayne, using those 4 words actually, in that order. From the official Superman Twitter account, by the way. Dude doesn't even use his Clark Kent Twitter. Like, he's still hiding behind his identity, but he decides to out Bruce's. That's hypocrisy right there. But I guess that's all politicians. With over 2.5 million retweets and over 3.5 million favorites, this is certainly #1 on trending for sure. At least until Kim K posts a pic in like a sexy Batman costume, so that the whole Bruce is actually Batman thing moves to #2, and then the whole internet breaks again. And at 9, joining Reverse Flash. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse 1, Flashpoint, we see a world where Barry Allen died while attempting to get his speed back with Thomas Wayne in the Flashpoint timeline. This leads to Reverse Flash claiming to be the Flash and trying to end the war with the Atlanteans and Amazons by threatening them. Obviously, this doesn't work out because they're the goddamn Atlanteans and Amazons. So, in an effort to save himself, Reverse Flash races through time, changing events to create the world exactly how he wants it, which involves saving not only Bruce Wayne, but Martha and Thomas Wayne as well, resulting in a world without a Batman. Because, you know, Batman's gonna fight against Reverse Flash no matter what. So, just getting rid of Batman, this is the smartest thing any villain has ever done. Straight up. But on the final page of this issue, we see Eobard with all the new heroes he ended up creating and convincing them to join him, as we can see by the Reverse Flash symbols on their suits. Even Green Lanterns and Wonder Woman has one. This page also has a Superman and honestly, sick suit, but being controlled, or I guess led by the Reverse Flash, makes this utterly horrifying to think about, especially when you can see the other members of the Flash family racing behind Reverse Flash. Like, he finally got what he wanted. Eobard became the Flash, and now he has his own Justice League that serves his own purposes. This should have been higher. And at 8, put Atlantis in the desert. Superman has his dark moments in Injustice. This especially includes Injustice Gods Among Us #12, written by Tom Taylor with art from Mike Miller and Tom Denerick. Injustice Gods Among Us 12 shows readers Aquaman unleashing Atlantean armies on coastal cities around the globe as a way to show Superman that, you know, it's not gonna happen. Atlantis will not be taken. Superman, of course, takes this as a threat, because of course he does, and you know, Batman knew this would happen. But Aquaman, being Aquaman, refuses to back down, and Superman decides to teach him a lesson. But rather than actually like attacking and probably killing Aquaman, Superman enlists the help of Wonder Woman and the Green Lantern to literally lift Atlantis from the ocean and set it down in the middle of the Sahara Desert, as far from water as he could possibly get on Earth. Honestly, he might as well just put them in space. All of that would just be like direct murder and everyone would have gotten mad at that. But like, honestly, I don't think Superman is above that. This guy is a frickin' monster. And it's 7, killing Green Arrow. Being as powerful as he is, it's important that Superman keeps a tight grip on his sanity and his powers, because, you know, a huge part of the reason that Clark trusts Bruce with shards of kryptonite is because he knows that he can end up being used as a weapon or just going crazy if Lois dies. In this case, he wants Batman to stop him using that kryptonite. However, when Superman goes too far, sometimes nobody's actually there to stop him. In Injustice Gods Among Us #11, the issue before Superman dropped Atlantis in the Sahara Desert, when the Green Arrow is trying to distract Superman, he fires an arrow at him that bounces off Superman because, you know, it's not a kryptonite arrow, but then it hits his father, Jonathan Kent, in the shoulder. It doesn't kill him. He's fine, he just got shot in the shoulder, but Superman gets so enraged at this that he flies at Green Arrow and immediately starts beating him to death in a furious rage. I mean, like, killing him would be one thing because he's Oliver Queen and he's like one of the sexiest men alive, but brutally beating him is something else entirely, especially with his mother yelling at him, begging for him to stop. Like, dude, listen to your mom, she knows best. Eat your vegetables. And at 6, Batman's backup plan. At this point, it's pretty well known that Bruce Wayne kept files and tools to destroy each of the members of the Justice League if it was necessary. Though Clark, like I said, wants Batman to have this ability since he fears himself if he ends up getting manipulated or whatnot, like literally every time Brainiac shows up. But the other Justice League members have not given Batman their information or like been like, yeah man, you can do that. In JLA, The Tower of Babel by Mark Waid and Howard Porter, Batman is shown to keep secret records of how to completely destroy each and every member of the Justice League. These records are then taken by Ra's al Ghul and used to decimate the League, proving an ultimate betrayal on the part of Bruce Wayne. Okay, I get it, like I understand the desire to be prepared since, you know, people in this universe seem to be turned by villains like Brainiac on a regular basis, but that's what Task Force X is for. That's why we have a whole game called Kill the Justice League. You don't need to have like a super secret, this is how you kill all of us hard drive that just begs for every single villain to try and steal it. Like, it's kind of stupid how you thought that was a good idea. All you need to do is have it in your brain. You're the world's greatest detective and you couldn't detect that that was a bad idea. Halfway through into number 5, Wonder Woman destroying the Justice League. When it comes to power and skill levels, Wonder Woman is arguably one of the strongest members of the Justice League. Characters like Superman and Martian Manhunter may have incredible power as aliens, and Superman especially may well just be the most powerful hero of all, but Wonder Woman is also basically a deity, at least being a god adjacent, because, you know, she's an Amazon. She's one of DC's most powerful heroes, if not their most powerful hero, especially if Kryptonite's around, and she has to keep her abilities and powers in check, much like how Spider-Man always has to pull his punches so he doesn't kill someone. However, in a one-shot called JLA A League of One, written by Christopher Moeller, Wonder Woman realizes that the Justice League are just holding her back. She realizes that the entire league will be destroyed if she doesn't stop them herself, so she takes on each member of the Justice League and takes them down on her own so that she can act individually, kinda like a mini version of Marvel's Civil War but on a much smaller and less daunting scale. Though understandable, this is still an initial betrayal and a major hurt. Luckily for Wonder Woman, her team does forgive her, because, you know, she didn't actually kill them. Maybe she was just having a midlife crisis, we don't know. In at 4, Aquaman and Wonder Woman War. Ha, it rhymes. Ah, look at that, I managed to squeeze 2 Flashpoint numbers onto this list, hell yeah. I mean, they're different Flashpoints, but still. In the animated The Flashpoint Paradox movie in the DC animated universe, the world is much different to its CW counterpart, and, like, kind of the general DC universe, mostly due to the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman, who end up being the villains of the movie, thanks to them being former lovers while Aquaman was married to Mira, and then Wonder Woman then killed Mira when she tried to get revenge for her sleeping with her husband. But to be fair, she also wears Mira's crown after she kills her, so it's not really like it was like, oh yeah, it was self-defense. However, this war actually resulted in the destruction of the planet at the exact moment that Barry was able to get enough speed back to get back into the Speed Force and set everything straight. It's a really suspenseful moment where Reverse Flash had just been killed by Batman, so Barry would have enough speed to run back and stop himself from saving his mother. He managed to get into the Speed Force just before the world's destruction caught up with him. It's absolutely insane. It's very Justice League Zack Snyder Cut-esque. However, I'm pretty sure they got it from this movie either way. He managed to get back into the Speed Force before the world's destruction, and then the world was destroyed. But, so yeah, it's a bad thing, okay? Even if the Justice League isn't really a thing in this universe, it was still their fault. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Injustice. I think the whole Injustice Earth is enough of a sin to earn a spot on this list. Just the entirety of the Injustice world is truly an injustice. In a parallel universe, the Joker tricks Superman into killing his pregnant wife, Lois Lane, and detonating a nuclear weapon that destroys Metropolis, killing millions of people. Mad with grief and rage, and because, you know, Lois Lane died in this universe, Superman goes dark and murders the Joker, quickly losing his moral compass. 5 years after this moment, Superman has formed the One Earth regime to enforce global peace through fear, and rules the Earth as a ruthless dictator with an iron fist. Or I guess a steel fist. Get it? Because he's the Man of Steel. Anyway, alongside many other heroes and villains, he recruited or forced into joining him and killing any who oppose him. Batman ends up establishing the insurgency, which is actually supposed to oppose Superman's regime, and then that's why he exposes his identity. But then the ensuing war between the factions just leaves the Justice League disbanded. But either way, this is probably one of the darkest timelines. Penultimately, in at number 2, ruled the world. Usually when people talk about Superman ruling the world, they're talking about injustice. And while that is a great story and an example of what can go wrong with superheroes, the story of the King of the World is actually a good cautionary tale about Superman other than injustice. In the late 90s, this story features a series of prophecy-like dreams that make Superman realize that his regular MO of just flying around and waiting for disasters to happen isn't really working. And Kal-El decides to be a little more, proactive. In this case, that means building a series of spy satellites to survey Earth, helping Superman keep track of everything that's happening all at once, and then giving up his life as Clark Kent to work as Superman full time. Sleep deprived and losing his grip on humanity, Superman starts interfering more and more in Earth's affairs, toppling extremist governments and even changing the weather. When he realizes that he still can't be everywhere at once though, the Man of Steel deploys an army of Superman robots to help maintain law and order. Again, making him a benevolent dictator, only snapping out of it when he gets a kiss from Lois Lane. None of the Justice League really tries to stop him either, they just kind of accept it, which is surprising, especially for Batman. Although I find it funny how the Man of Steel deployed Men of Steel. And finally, and at number 1, getting Alfred killed. Look, after Bruce Wayne loses his parents, Thomas and Martha, he's a young boy, okay? The only person who can truly take care of Bruce is Alfred Pennyworth, the Wayne family butler. However, Alfred ends up becoming like a second father to Bruce, raising him to adulthood and caring for him throughout his entire life. He also cares for Bruce's children, as a grandfather, and sometimes even more of a father than Bruce to them. Alfred is incredibly important to Bruce, and probably the only family that the man truly has left. But in Injustice Year 5, number 23, Alfred is spending his birthday alone at Wayne Manor. Unbeknownst to him, Superman has sent the supervillain Victor Zsasz to interrogate him, an altercation which will ultimately result in Alfred's death. I know it was the Injustice Earth, okay, and Supes is a horrible person there, but honestly, think about it. This is the worst thing that Superman, and by proxy his Injustice League, has ever done. Because Alfred is the purest character in all of DC Comics. And in the moment that Alfred died, so did a piece of the DC universe. It doesn't matter if it was in one of Infinite Earths and it was one of Infinite Alfreds, none of them deserved this.
And at 10, 8 Aunt May and Mary Jane. Okay, so technically this is Spider-Man, but it's a zombie version of Spider-Man, but I'm gonna count it anyway because this is pretty damn messed up, zombie or not. On Earth 2149, an alien plague ends up infecting all superpowered individuals and turns them into zombies. However, it's later revealed that the Necronomicon from Evil Dead was actually what caused it. But after learning that the plague was actually like a bad thing, Peter ran home to get Aunt May and MJ the hell out of Dodge. But when he gets there, we get a good old case of protagonist syndrome and boom! Zombie Spider. He ends up becoming a zombie and eats the 2 most important people in his life. He also had a fractured jaw before becoming a zombie, so I'm sure you can imagine that this isn't a pretty sight, even by zombie standards. It may not be RP, but it was a version of Spider-Man, so it's fine. And at 9, Anna Marconi. Speaking of a version of Spider-Man, let's discuss the Superior Spider-Man and his fascination with Anna Marconi. Superior Spider-Man is actually Otto Octavius, who prior to the Superior Spider-Man storyline had brain swapped with Peter, yet a piece of Peter still remained in his own body, which convinced Otto to end up becoming a hero, albeit a darker one. Doc Ock was up to some really shady stuff while pretending to be Peter, cause you know, since Peter is young, handsome, in shape, and has actual women in his life, Otto tried his luck at getting MJ to sleep with him, but failed miserably. So, you know, things weren't going that well. But then there's Anna Marconi, whom this Otto-Peter hybrid started dating. She had no idea what the real situation was going on inside that noggin, and while it's unclear if they ever actually hopped on the good foot and did the bad thing, it's obvious that things were at least heading in that direction. Otto was in love with her, which was a surprise since he even decided to give Peter back his body to save her, but it was still an absolutely horrific story, immoral, in the highest class of the word. It's creepy as hell and it makes me rethink all relationships. And at 8, interfered with surgery. In the same series as the Anna Marconi situation, the small bit of Peter that was left in his body was trying to regain control, for obvious reasons, because you know, a supervillain was piloting his bone mech with meat armor. This small bit of Peter though was at times able to interfere or even control Otto temporarily. One of these moments came in Superior Spider-Man number 8, where there was a device that was capable of wiping Pete from Otto's brain, but to get it he had to perform surgery on a little girl. However, Peter didn't think that Otto could do it, so he tries to stop Otto from even performing the surgery, while he has his Spider-Man mask on, may I add, and an additional face mask. So if evil Spider-Man can do it, so can you. Even still, trying to prevent the surgery to save a little girl's life is a pretty low moment for the Barnacle, even if it was filled with good intentions. Kind of. Those only power crystals, you know. Actually, is that how it works? I don't know. I don't think like Topaz is gonna cure my depression or something. And in 7, scarring Harry Osborn. While Spider-Man 3 in and of itself is one of the most despicable things that Spider-Man has done, well, with the exception of that sweet dance scene, one of the most horrible things actually in the movie is during the final fight between Harry and Peter. Peter shows up at Harry's house wearing the black symbiote costume and is mad about Goblin Jr. being the reason that MJ left Peter. However, this fight is about more than that, since Harry still blames Peter for killing his father, and Peter is done trying to convince him. After wailing on him a little bit, Peter kicks Harry into the path of a rogue glider, sending him flying into a shelf of good old-fashioned pumpkin bombs. After some mental torment, he knocks Harry out against the wall, at least so he thinks. But in fact, Harry is awake, and as Peter is walking away, Harry decides to chuck a pumpkin bomb at Pete, who dodges it thanks to his spider sense, but then thanks to the symbiote throws it back at Harry, causing it to explode basically right next to his face. If it weren't for the Goblin Serum, Harry would definitely be dead, and honestly, even with it, I'm surprised that he survived. But you do have to admit, it was pretty damn cold, but Harry also did kind of deserve it. And at 6, assorted killings. For being a hero that has a strict no killing rule, Spider-Man has killed quite a few people, but perhaps most notably Logan's friend Charlie, in the graphic novel Spider-Man vs. Wolverine from 1987. The plot of this is that both Wolverine and Spidey end up in Berlin for their own reasons, and as the title suggests, Wolverine and Spider-Man end up fighting each other, in a graveyard to be exact. The fight is actually a good one, with Spidey even having the mindset to kill Wolverine because Logan might kill him first. They don't know each other that well at this point. The fight ends only when a helicopter of bad guys shows up looking for Logan's friend Charlie. Wolverine wanted to help his friend stop killing, but now since this helicopter showed up, Wolverine wants to kill her quick, since, you know, they aren't going to. Which he doesn't actually have to do because Spider-Man does. After Charlie intentionally sets off his spider sense and gets a super powered spider punch to the face, killing her instantly. Halfway through into number 5, kissed Gwen's daughter. After learning that your father isn't actually your father, but rather your mother's ex who she cheated on with his worst enemy, what do you think you would do? Also, you're aging more rapidly because your real father has some form of goblin serum in his system that somehow passed on to you, but you only age up physically, so you're mentally 10 with the body of an adult. Yeah, you may want to skip this number. Since Pete and Sarah end up getting closer after fighting off dealers in Paris, but this was made even worse when they're in Paris without MJ, who Peter didn't bring for whatever reason. The thing is though, Peter thinks that this is entirely platonic. This just goes to show you that if your partner thinks that someone's trying to get with you, you should listen. Because lo and behold, Sarah ends up planting one on her almost dad, just as MJ shows up for a surprise visit. And I think the name of the storyline, Sins Remembered, is way too fitting and is definitely going to be seared into my brain now. God damn it. You thought that Gwen and Green Goblin was bad? Oh boy. And at 4, sold his marriage. After siding with Tony in the events of the first Civil War, Spider-Man has to reveal his identity to the world in order to continue fighting crime. And you know, since now every supervillain on Earth knows how to get to Spider-Man, Kingpin ends up attacking Peter at his home. He dodges the bullets, but they end up hitting Aunt May instead, putting her in critical condition. This is the start of the One More Day storyline, probably the most universally hated Spider-Man run of all time. Since in order to save Aunt May, Peter talks to Mephisto and ends up selling his marriage to MJ in order to save his aunt. So their entire marriage will get erased so that he can have at least one more day with his aunt. Aside from living with the consequences of your actions, because you know, that's not what heroes do. Which is also pretty goddamn horrible. You wanna know what else is pretty goddamn horrible? Like, MJ had to agree to it as well, or at least she had to say that she did. But like, seriously, if you're being realistic, okay? How many years does Aunt May really have left? Okay, like, honestly, not many. So selling your marriage to bring back your one foot in the grave aunt just seems like a not so even trade to me. I'm just saying, MJ's gonna be around for longer. You heard it right, ladies. I'd let my old aunt die for you. Hit me up. Getting close to the end into number 3, One Moment in Time. The One Moment in Time story comes after the One More Day story, and this seems to be the storyline that No Way Home is taking inspiration from. However, after saving Aunt May, Wilson Fisk ends up sending a hitman after MJ's Aunt Anna Watson, but the hitman, revealed to be Eddie Brock, ends up attacking Mary Jane. Peter takes the wounded MJ to Doctor Strange, who heals her, but Peter also insists that Doctor Strange performs a spell that causes everyone to forget that he's Spider-Man, because again,
not living with the consequences of his actions. Strange contacts Iron Man and Mr. Fantastic for advice, and they end up agreeing with him eventually. They do, however, decide that nobody should remember who Peter is aside from Peter. Not Doctor Strange, not Tony, not Mr. Fantastic, not MJ. But Peter, being Peter, jumps out of his protective bubble and grabs MJ and pulls her in before the spell is complete. They wake up in a motel and Peter explains what happened. Mary Jane asks why he couldn't just let her forget, and then she explains that she can't be with him because it's only a matter of time before somebody rips off his mask again and they go after her family, and that's a danger that she can't let happen. Back in the present though, Mary Jane also explains that he has to move on and find somebody who can be with him. Should've just let her forget it, man. Penultimately, in number 2, hit Mary Jane. To get things straight, I understand that finding out that you're actually a clone and that the real Peter Parker has been living his life for the past few years as Ben Reilly because he thought he was the clone would be pretty earth-shattering, but nonetheless, it doesn't excuse this behavior. You may be under a lot of stress, but you never hit or take it out on your partner in any way whatsoever. No matter what gender you are or aren't, you just don't, okay? But Peter didn't get that memo for a minute, since in the Clone Wars storyline after finding this out, Peter and Ben are in the middle of a scrap. Mary Jane admittedly doesn't make the brightest move though when she attempts to break the two up, but Peter instinctively backhands her across the room, a moment we see referenced in Spider-Man 3 in the cafe that MJ works at. However, in the comic, Mary Jane was actually currently pregnant with his child, and while Peter does instantly regret this and is filled with shame and guilt, he runs away. He doesn't check on his pregnant wife. He flees and joins up with Jackal, so yeah. Not the finest moment there, dude. Finally, in number 1, killed Mary Jane. I know I say I hate talking about this, but honestly, if I have to suffer through this knowledge, so does everyone else. It's like my own way of being a supervillain. In the Spider-Man Reigns storyline, it's revealed that Mary Jane is dead, but it's also revealed later on why she's dead, since she was married to Peter, and as I've mentioned, did eventually want to have kids with him. The thing is though, a radioactive spider biting your hand does more to a man than lets him stick to walls and perform incredible acrobatics. It also fills that man with radiation, and anything else he feels also gets filled with radiation, if you catch my drift. Whether you're role-playing a lab experiment or not, that's what ended up happening after all, since Mary Jane ends up dying of cancer thanks to the radiation that Peter was packing in those swimmers. Yeah, it's absolutely horrible, and while yes, it's a question that everyone had, it's not something we ever wanted an answer to, especially if this is the way that it was gonna go.